We get the most votes of anybody, of any sitting president in history. And he beat us by a whisker.
In a frankly stunning development, Donald Trump just accidentally admitted in public that President Biden beat him in the 2020 election. And given that this is the closest we will ever get to a public concession of that fact, we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video, starting with this stunning one, this earth-shattering one. When you play the clip, you're going to be stunned by the words. Then, of course, Donald Trump is going to pull his Donald Trump nonsense, right? So you're going to be thinking, damn, it's pretty sad that this is the best we're going to get. But it's quite frankly stunning given the relentless lying and delusion that Donald Trump has employed over the past 4 years. He's sitting down in a conversation with a spokesperson for Moms for Liberty, which is a far-right anti-LGBTQ advocacy group, an activist group. And during the course of that conversation, Trump let it slip that President Biden beat him by getting more votes.
10 or 12 million votes more than that, more than anybody had ever got. We get the most votes of anybody, of any sitting president in history. And he beat us by a whisker. And it was a terrible thing. They used COVID to cheat, and it was a terrible thing. And then I watched, and I thought it was very, very sad because of, the election it brought.
So you can see that he caught him saying, oh my God, I just admitted that in public. He beat us by a whisker. Now, of course, that whisker is a pretty big whisker because it was 7 million votes. President Biden defeated Donald Trump by more than twice the number of votes as Secretary Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump in terms of the popular vote. And in terms of the electoral vote margin, the electoral college margin, it was the same between Biden and Trump in 2020 and Trump and Clinton in 2016. So the same margin by which Trump beat Secretary Hillary Clinton in 2016 in terms of the electoral college count, that's how Biden beat Trump. And then 7 million in the popular vote. But think about it, even the phrasing here was really curious. It gives the game away. Donald Trump first said, we got more votes than anyone, then he corrects himself and he said, any sitting president, which is true. Donald Trump in the 2020 election got more votes than any sitting incumbent president. It's just that Joe Biden, his Democratic challenger, got 7 million more. So when you take these two statements together, more votes than any sitting president, he qualified it, and then said that Biden beat us by a whisker, which is an exaggeration because that's a hell of a whisker. It's 7 million votes. That's a hell of a figure. He clearly knows he lost the 2020 election. And it's so sad that we have to almost celebrate this. But so many Trump supporters say, well, Trump doesn't know that he lost the election. Like even centrist apologists who are like, sure, Trump lost the election, but he's not lying because he thinks he won the election. And many people, myself included, think that as stupid as Donald Trump is, he's not that deluded. As a matter of fact, in the Jack Smith indictments, the Washington, D.C. January 6th indictments, one of the two federal cases, they lay out the evidence pretty clearly based on comments that Trump made to members of his staff and Mike Pence and others, that Trump did know deep down that he lost, and he let it slip to people from time to time. This is the closest thing to a public concession that we will ever get from this deranged, malignant narcissist. And again, the phrasing of it makes it very clear. He knows Joe Biden beat him. Not more votes than anybody ever. More votes, he says, than any sitting president. And Joe Biden beat him. Then, of course, he has to count. They cheated because of COVID. Obviously, it's ridiculous. Obviously, it's pathetic. But he gives the game away. He knows he lost. Some other clips I want to play as well that are noteworthy because he said some unhinged things during this conversation.
That's right. You don't have to do anything. We saw that the other night. And you won't see too many more interviews. And I have a debate coming up with this one. And she didn't want to debate. She didn't want to debate. They were not happy about it, but they got the network that they wanted. This network is the worst of all. George Slopadopoulos, you know who he is. But they are the worst in terms.
So the projection of Donald Trump here, they didn't want to debate. They were daring you to debate. Trump, as we've covered in previous videos, was the one repeatedly, publicly saying that he might back out. Why am I going to do this? They're not going to be fair to me. He repeatedly, for weeks, publicly entertained the idea of backing out. Vice President Harris has been fully committed since day one. So again, the projection, the lies, he is uncomfortable about debating the vice president, but he can't admit to it because he's such a thin-skinned, malignant narcissist. He has to project that onto her, even though the facts say otherwise. Another clip I want to show you is a really kind of gross clip where you can just see Donald Trump's greed and lust for power manifest. This is a real clip, and he sounds almost like Kingpin, right? Or something like a Marvel villain, the way that he says what he's about to say.
And so I just ask you, there's been an explosion in the number of children who identify as transgender, and children are being taught that they were born in the wrong body. It's an incredibly abusive message to send. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you might be able to do as president.
Well, you can do everything. President has such power. It has such power.
The way he talks about power. Now, again, I should say before we get into that, it is really gross what Moms for Liberty, again, a very far right, radical, hateful organization. You know, they attack trans people, trans children, trans people, of course, being one of the most marginalized groups in the country, a marginalized group that is, just seriously impacted by high rates of suicidal ideation and suicidality. And they are hyperfixating on this very small marginalized group and making it their life's mission to make their lives more miserable. Just a profoundly cruel group. And they want Trump to leverage the powers of his presidency, should he win a second term, to be, he would be, again, the most powerful person on earth again. And you have a bully in that position, they would be the greatest bully in existence, the most dangerous bully in existence. And she's basically teeing him up. Will you use the awesome powers of the presidency to negatively impact and make harder the lives of this marginalized group? That's bad enough. And then to hear how Trump responds, talking, lustfully about the power of the presidency. You can do anything as president. So much power. It's almost like there needs to be like a parental warning, like listening to that clip, because it's just really gross. But that's how he conceptualizes the presidency. It's all about self-aggrandizement and power. But then, of course, you wonder, if you can do anything as president, Donald, why didn't you build your wall? Why didn't you repeal and replace Obamacare? Gas was relatively low. Why wasn't it lower still? Why didn't you cap insulin at $35? Why didn't you pass your infrastructure bill? Why didn't you do all these things that you said you were going to do? Donald Trump wants power. He loves power. But in terms of leveraging power responsibly to achieve the ends that the American people needs, he has no conception of it, which is why one of the reasons why he was such a legitimately terrible president. He had the wrong attitude for it. He was profoundly stupid. But unlike President Biden and Vice President Harris, he didn't know how to leverage power to accomplish policy goals which would benefit the American people, which is why on so many of these issues, infrastructure, capping insulin at $35, allowing Medicare to negotiate prescription drug prices, withdrawing from Afghanistan, all these things, Biden was able to succeed where Trump failed. Because again, Trump is not an administrator. He's not an executive. He's somebody who wants that sort of power to just hoard it unto himself and then let other people run things in his name while he golfs. That's what Donald Trump thinks of the presidency. Really gross stuff. One final clip from this deranged conversation.
What's happening to our country is being poisoned, and your schools and your children are suffering greatly because they're going into the classrooms, they're taking the seats, and they don't even speak English. It's crazy. And what's happening?
So yet again, Donald Trump's xenophobia and racism on full display, echoing that Nazi rhetoric, which we've heard him use before about immigrants and non-native English speakers, poisoning the blood of this country, poisoning our culture. He repeats it yet again. It wasn't a fluke. It would have been bad enough if it was a one-off, but this is seriously how he thinks about people in this country who are non-native English speakers or who speak a different language, and not just adults. Think what he said, schools, children. That's how despicable this man is. He is profoundly, manifestly unfit for the presidency. I'm sure you knew that, but this was a microcosm on full display. His ignorance, his lust for power, his stupidity. And the one good thing that came out of all of it is Donald Trump had, in a brief moment, the gears clicked in place where he accidentally let it slip that Joe Biden beat him in the 2020 election. That's the closest we'll ever get to a public concession of that fact. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.